Everyone. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Good evening. Thrilled to welcome all of you to tonight's event, where we'll be diving into some of the most pressing and exciting trends shaping the future. Is it going? Little seatsy fly. Check. Can you hear me in the back? Oh. This is actually a karaoke night. So I'll start again. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming out. We're very excited to have you here. Thrilled to welcome you to tonight's event, where we'll be diving into some of the most pressing and exciting trends shaping the future of real estate. My name is Eric Wainwright, COO at STOREYS. On behalf of the company, it's my pleasure to be here with such a distinguished group of professionals who are driving innovation in our industry. First off, I'd like to extend a big thank you to our sponsor, Interac Verified. Their commitment to empowering seamless, secure, and efficient transactions is truly transforming how business is done in real estate and beyond. Without their support, today's event would not have been possible, so thank you. At STOREYS, we see constant examples of how the real estate landscape is evolving at an unprecedented pace. From digital transformation to changing market dynamics, our daily coverage helps everyone from industry experts and thought leaders to first-time consumers navigate these exciting but albeit complex times. As the most read and most respected real estate news site in the country, we feel it's our responsibility to cover the market accurately, fairly, and with as much insider knowledge as possible. As for tonight, we'll be kicking off with an engaging panel discussion where some of the leading experts in Toronto real estate will be sharing their perspectives on key trends, whether it's technology-driven innovations, the changing expectations of clients, or strategies for navigating today's challenging market. We'll dive into real-world strategies that you can apply to your work right away. After that, we have a fireside chat featuring product experts who'll be exploring the latest tools and technologies that are reshaping the transactional side of real estate. This is an opportunity to hear from the people who are at the cutting edge of making payments, transactions, and financial operations more streamlined and secure. As all of you well know, real estate is about much more than buildings and property. It's about people, relationships, and opportunities. Today, we're coming together to not only learn, but also to connect, share ideas, and leave here better equipped to drive success in each of our businesses. Once again, thank you to Interac for sponsoring the event, and a big thank you to all of you for showing up, being here tonight to listen. I know you're all eager to get started, so without further ado, let's jump into our panel discussion. Please join me in welcoming Kevin Crigger, TRREB's newly appointed Associate CEO and President of PropTechs, who will be kicking off tonight's conversation.
Thank you so much, Eric. So brokerages, like individual realtors, are incredibly diverse with a plethora of different business models. Starting with Evan. For our first question, could you take a moment to introduce yourself and define your brokerage business?
Yeah, certainly. Evan Sage, Sage Real Estate, partnered with my brother and father, Larry and Brad Sage. We've been now 14 years as Sage Real Estate. And Midtown Toronto, we sort of saw an opportunity to create a brokerage model that was slightly different and really focus on full service, full fee realtors and trying to help support them in any manner that was scalable and that we could execute.
Thank you. Vivian.
Hi, everyone. Oh, wow, this is loud. My name is Vivian Risi. I'm broker owner of Royal LePage, your community realty. Family-run business. I operate the business as a broker of record, but I also I always say that it takes a team, and I have a team with me. My daughter Michelle is here, and I've got my granddaughter here too. She's not in real estate, but you never know, right, Allie? And my son Justin is also involved in the business, exactly. But started in real estate many years ago. I just celebrated. Kevin, you were there at my party. It wasn't my party. It was really TRREB. It was a 50-year anniversary in real estate. I know, 50. It was quite the event. And I know that Elise Callis was supposed to be there that night. Elise Callis is in the audience as well. Elise, congratulations to you as well. I understand that you just celebrated 50 as well. Being a member of the Toronto Real Estate Board, what a great organization. And I started in real estate back in the day, and I started in sales. Independent contractors were not in at the time. We were all employees at the time. And in 1994, I had an opportunity, and that's when I incorporated my company, Your Community, and hence here we are today. I run multiple offices in the GTA. We have approximately 1,400 realtors and multiple offices, and we operate on the concept of full service. We grandfathered that with the corporate entity that we were involved with years ago, and Royal LePage was a mirror image of what I was all about. And it's full service, and we believe very much in education, and we have an in-house academy as well. So that's how we operate our business.
Thank you so much. Michael.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Michael Callis, Harvey Callis Real Estate. Brokerage was started by my father, who's here tonight, Harvey Callis, in 1957. That's 67 years ago. Harvey was a realtor for 5 years before that. So we focused our attention on being an agent-centric brokerage. So everything that we do, we treat our agent as our client. So that's our concept. So in everything that we do, myself and our management team, that's our focus. So it's education. It's a lot about developing a culture of cooperation and collaboration. And that's us. We've got 7 offices in Ontario and 288 agents. I'll pass.
Thanks so much. Steve.
First of all, thank you very much for putting this event amazing. My name is Steve Tabrizi. I'm a broker partner with Remax Hallmark Group of Company. I have 2 amazing partners, Ken McLaughlin and Deborah Bain. We've been around since 1980, so 44 years. We have over 2,000 agents, 42 offices in Ontario, and 3 offices now in US. We operate on 3 principles. We are in the business of the building of our agent business. We are not bystander in our community, and we are guardian of our industry.
Thank you. Karen.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm Karen Yolevski, the COO of Royal LePage's corporately owned brokerages. So as the corporate stores, we span 3 provinces with over 2,000 agents. In the GTA, we've got 12 offices representing well over 1,200 agents. So we operate on size and scale, which allows us to do many great things because of that. Our main pillars being education, great training for our agents, professionalism. We're able to ensure that our agents are most up to date in terms of what's happening in the industry, and they have the tools they need to not just succeed, but succeed in a compliant way. And we're able to bring forward cutting edge tools, technology, marketing services, and all of the things that help take agents and their services to the next level. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. So no conversation about real estate really can occur without a discussion on technology. And the easy question that I could ask you that you could answer in your sleep is, what has the impact of technology been over the last 10 or 20 years? But I think it's self-evident. The more important question as brokerage leaders, over the next 2 or 3 years, what do you see as a key impact of technology on the brokerage business and your brokerage specifically? And Evan, we'll start with you.
Start back down here. Thank you. Yeah, as you said, sort of self-evident technology is part of the fabric of this business now, and we just always have to be prepared and comfortable with change. I think a lot of agents push back against change because you like it the way it is, but inevitably some new policy is going to come in and something's going to happen, a trust is going to hit you in the face and derail you for a couple months, but then you move on. So we see those sort of things as opportunity whenever there's that chaos to really embrace it and figure out how we can make it easier. One of the main pieces of technology that we've really invested in was building out our own engagement platform, which helps our agents stay in touch with their database, because it's very hard to do on a one-on-one basis for agents. And I mean, there's tons of things we do with giving away pies at Thanksgiving or dropping off pumpkins at Halloween or doing all these sort of things. But at the end of the day, it is a professional service, so what can we do to sort of deliver that professional value at scale? So we started with this idea that 90% of clients are happy to very happy with their agents at closing, but only 12% were using that same agent because it was 10, 12, 15 years later when they moved again. So it's just that communication drop off. The pies are great, but it's not going to keep that client hanging around in 10 years. So we started with the sold reports where we did 10 neighborhoods and we sent the information out of what sold in your neighborhood. And every month our team would pull that data and then send it out to our agents' database on their behalf. So it was really easy for the agents to do. And then it was delivering this information that the clients actually wanted. And they would open it up, click on it, check out their neighborhoods. And we kept saying, more neighborhoods, add more, add more. It got to 200 and something neighborhoods. And we were about 40 staff hours a month dedicated to that one project. These were all like high quality graphic designers, and we had them like doing data input every month. Like they hated it as well. So 2021 was a good year. We had funds to roll back in, so we rolled back in and we became sort of tech entrepreneurs as well. And we're now doing, built a company called Castle, which does the engagement platform for us. And it basically stays in touch with all of our agents' database and keeps them engaged with the real estate information so they can see what's sold in their neighborhood. It's, we sort of married the House Sigma and the Properly and the different tools that were out there in the tech world into the full service real estate sphere so that the actual client was getting it from the agent that they already know, like, and trust. I don't want to drone on and on, but it's been a really cool platform. We're getting tons of engagement from it, and the most important thing is then our agents can look at their database and they can actually see who's looking at the sold information. They can put in their own property and then track the value of it so that every day if they see a sold sign around the corner, they can go home, jump on the computer, do it mobily, and see what did that sold sign do to the value of my property. So they can track it like a stock ticker. That stuff has kept our agents or our clients really engaged with our agents, and I think long term we'll see, instead of that 90% happy down to 12% returning, hopefully bumping that number well up.
Beautiful. I'm going to ask the same question of Michael. What do you see as the sort of most impactful effect of technology over the next 2 to 3 years in the brokerage business or in your specific brokerage?
Okay, that's a good question. Threw me off by skipping my partner here, but okay. Come back to her. Actually, I'm going to jump off. I'm going to answer this question, but before I do, I just want to take a moment to relay a story completely unrelated to technology. Many years ago, I joined a club, and we've got 4 kids. They were much younger at the time. And I really wasn't using it much. And I bumped into one of my parents' very good friends, Sandy Waldman, high-end executive, ran one of the great private companies in Canada, Sandy Lion. And she said, Michael, what do you think of the club? I said, you know what, Sandy, to be honest with you, I really am not liking it that much. She said, why is that? I said, well, they don't make our kids feel welcome. The kids can't play tennis at this time. The kids can't eat in the dining room at this time. And she looked at me. I thought she was going to empathize with my complaints. And she said, you know what, Michael? You've got 2 choices. Either join the board or quit the club. I bring that story up for a reason. Kevin Crigger, who has just made the transition to become the associate CEO of TRREB, is doing exactly that. He's someone in the community who's an incredibly successful salesperson. He's transitioning full-time into running the Toronto Real Estate Board. And I think we should give him a round of applause because everyone knows what should be done, and everyone has recommendations, but very few people step up and do something about it. So congratulations, Craig, and thank you on behalf of all of us. So let's go to technology. It's a double-edged sword. We've made so many changes from a technological standpoint. We've created an intranet service called Callis 360 where agents can get all of the marketing material, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and they need an offer or a feature sheet or a just listed card or anything related to their CRM. It can be done instantly. We've partnered with a Canadian company to provide social media posts and a CRM system proprietary for our agents, which has been very successful. But, I asked a question, I think it was just after maybe around 2022, I said to our agents, how many people have sold a home to someone they haven't met? One person. So I think we all have to remind ourselves about that, because technology is wonderful, texts and emails and social media posts, I think they're all fantastic. I don't want to come off sounding as though I'm against any of these things, but nothing replaces face-to-face. And I think sometimes we hide behind emails and texts and posting on social media, and we forget that the principal rule of real estate is the principal rule of life. It happens face-to-face.
Can
I'll
I add
pass.
to that?
Please.
You know, I love what you just said. It's there to enhance us, not to replace us. Thank you.
And maybe to that point, where do you see areas that technology will enhance the brokerage experience or the realtor experience most directly?
I'm seeing it in technology is moving like it's a moving target, constant moving target. So I'm seeing right now the big buzzword AI, all of that's going on. People are right into it. Will this replace this? Absolutely not. I'm seeing, you know, our industry is relying on these sources as the clients are. So we need to keep up with that. But really, at the end of the day, we are looking at, you know, services that will speed up the process and communication with our clients. As a broker, our agents are the client. So for us, we would like to communicate with our agents efficiently, and that's what we're struggling with every day, is the communication aspect. As much as we have it all available, nobody reads emails anymore. You can send out so many emails, nobody's reading them. So I'm always thinking, how can we reach everyone? What do we need to do to communicate with these people to get their attention? So that is really something that we're working very, very hard on within our industry, within the business. Communication and keeping up with the marketing aspects. Our realtors need tools. So this is where the next line will be. So we bring in-house graphic artists. Well, that's not good enough. We need, you know, that's passé now. What's a graphic? I mean, they're valuable people, but that's yesterday. What's today? What's tomorrow? So again, it all relies on the platforms that are coming out, the new apps that are coming out. I give credit to anyone that's creative and invests in apps, but for how long do these apps last? So this is why it's very important to be aligned with an entity that is strong, that continues to investigate and invest in what's coming next. Because if we sit back and say, well, this is good enough today, well, today, it's not going to be good enough for tomorrow. So that's what we're doing right now.
Beautiful. Thank you. Steve and Karen, I'll switch up the question for you. So obviously, technology and sort of a tech stack is key in the brokerage space. How do you evaluate new technology? What is sort of a key factor in technology that you choose to adopt into your tech stack? And how do you work on agent adoption from the brokerage perspective?
First of all, I echo everybody that's shared earlier. You talk about adaptation. Our industry is really suffering with adaptation. Average has been 17%. Our industry really constantly has been resistant to change. Sometimes I am grateful for COVID, because the COVID really caused that we go 10x. So, but what I see in the industry, actually my director of my technology here is in the audience, and kudos to him. I can't have his job, and I don't want to have his job because he's doing an amazing. So what we see the transaction process, modern consumers. So Michael shared a story, so maybe I share a story. Recently, my daughter got engaged. I haven't been in sales for probably 15 years. I haven't touched, opened a lockbox, and I help my daughter to see the home. But I see the expectation of the modern consumers. They want the process from the beginning to the end be very seamless. As everybody says, agents, relationship, we talk about artificial intelligence, but we should talk also about emotional intelligence. You are in control of emotional intelligence. What we are really working very hard at RE/MAX Hallmark, we have a platform called Hallmark Hub, does everything automation. Now we are adding AI to it, but we want to make sure now we are addressing the agent's needs, but the next step is the consumer's needs. Consumers love to see everything on one platform. Right now, your job is really becoming exhausting. You got to coordinate with a lawyer, with the inspector, with this, with that. Did somebody get this document? Somebody didn't get that document. So we are really working heavily on amalgamating the horizontal integration. If you look at the industry in the last 5 years, vertical integration has been done. Many of us, we use KV Core. You know, every brokerage announced every day something, every brand announced, oh, we got this platform. But those are all vertical integration. Zillow bought Open Door, bought Dot Loop and everything, but nobody has amalgamated them. Now with the AI, everybody's saying, hold on a second. Now we need to, everybody, all these tools, they got to talk to each other. So you have a seamless process from the beginning to the end, and that's what the modern consumers are expecting. You will not be replaced by AI, but I promise you, those that they use the tools and technology in this room, they will replace the agent that they are going to be resistant to it. So this 17% adaptation rate gotta go to 90%. If you don't get on this journey with the technology and you keep avoiding it, there are going to be agents that will be ahead of you. Why? The technology, only thing it does for you is to streamline the process, and the connectivity with the consumers become 10 times faster than somebody that doesn't use it.
Thanks so much. Karen?
So there are two different audiences when you're talking about technology. If you're talking about the back office of a brokerage, technology is meant purely to drive efficiency because you're not selling that technology or using that technology to attract or retain clientele, which in this case are realtors for brokerages. So that would be my litmus test for back-end operating systems, processes, technology implementation. Is it going to make our efforts more seamless, faster, more efficient, and more cost-effective for our clientele? When you turn it and you look at the client, the realtor, there really is one test, and I think we've circled around it here so far in what we've said. Technology is only valuable if you use it. That's the only test for technology. Do you use it? Because if you don't use it, it doesn't matter what it said it could do or what you thought it could do. It's doing nothing for you. So is it going to make a realtor's life so much better, easier, make their practice more cost efficient, help them serve more clients, give them a competitive edge? And is it easily adoptable? Will they use it? And why I think we're seeing so much discussion noise around AI is because it's incredibly user-friendly, and what you get out of that technology is worth the effort you're putting in. So to learn something, to try something new, to search in a new way, that's generating results that are instantaneously making your life, your business, that much better, easier, faster, that you're going to adopt. It's like saying, I use Waze now because I want to be able to get around, or I use Uber because I want to be able to get a cab at the push of a button. It really made your life that much better, so adoption was very fast. So those are my bright line tests for technology.
Beautiful. Now, Vivian, the customer is always right, and realtors are the brokerage's customers. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting relationship because you're also responsible for every agent who's part of your brokerage, and compliance becomes a sort of bigger and bigger conversation with, you know, massive FinTrack fines that we've seen over the last year, changes to TRREB and the regulatory environment. How do you balance that relationship, and where does that tension lie in the future of brokerage?
That is so hard right now as a broker. If I said, oh yeah, it doesn't matter what we do. You know, there's a fine line here. We've got independent contractors that are like, they're their own bosses. I was going to say loose cannons, but I won't say that. Your own bosses. They're independent contractors. They're given the right to make their decisions. They operate that way. But yet, the broker is responsible for the independent contractor if they breach any rules, regulations, bylaws. That is very difficult. What we have in place, we have an in-house governance that is, I believe these days, exhausting themselves to trying to keep up with, you know, supporting the realtor, making sure that they understand how to, you know, comply. We have courses constantly, but it just doesn't seem to sink in with some people. So how do we do? We need to look at this from another angle. I think the Toronto Real Estate Board has to play, and Kevin, I know you've got this is your new job. We don't want to discourage you, but you've got a big nut to crack. I'm going to share a story with everybody right now. Just happened. Like, this just happened. Like, I could vent all day long with it. I saw a lawyer in the room. I said, I got to talk to you later. Okay. One of my realtors made an appointment, not naming names, made an appointment to go show some condos downtown. Had four booked in the same building. Okay? This gentleman does. He's condos for rent. Makes his appointments on Broker Bay, pushes the button, doesn't need to have a secretary do it, because, everything's automated. And he goes in to Broker Bay, does his appointments. One of them doesn't confirm or deny the appointment. It just sits there. So he goes into the building. He's got all his listings with him. And he picks up the keys at the concierge. The concierge gives him the key to the one listing that wasn't confirmed. And he goes in, knocks on the door, shows a listing, in and out, 5 minutes are gone. The client happens to get an automated message from Broker Bay, says, hey, somebody was just in the unit. She says, well, nobody called me to say I had an appointment. So the listing agent that never made the phone call to his client calls our agent and gives him, peace of his mind and says, this is wrong. And he said, I'm really sorry. I thought it was confirmed. Anyways, he sends in a letter of apology. That wasn't good enough. Send me another letter of apology. He sends it in to the client. But do we know if the client got the letter? We don't know. Anyways, goes to TRREB. TRREB finds him, get this, $25,000, and fines me $25,000. That's right. And I thought, are you kidding me? Okay, first of all, how do I control? Let's talk about the broker now. He's losing his mind, but how do I control a realtor that makes an appointment and makes a mistake? Okay. The broker gets fined $25,000? That just does not make sense. So, we better do something, is what I'm saying. Now, okay. Okay. I'm not here complaining, but you asked me the question, and it just happened. So what I'm saying is, we've got to do something about it. I'm prepared to do something about it. I'm prepared to clarify. I'm not here to, hurt anyone. I'm saying, I'm saying, hey, something's got to change here. Can we find out what's really going on? Can we really clarify who's responsible for what and how we can be better at what we do? I'm okay to be responsible, okay? Everyone in this room has a license. You're okay to be responsible, but there's got to be a limit. You can't be held responsible for someone else's actions. But as realtors, now we've established this new platform of independent contractor status, but you still want us to operate as employers. We've got to make some clarity changes so that we can clarify as brokers how much we can do and say. So we've got to be given those instructions clearly from our, governance, RICO, TRREB, together, has to pull a few meetings together and get some serious people at the table. And I often say, these people that were hearing this case, were they elected? Who are these guys? I mean, are they brokers? How big are their offices? How much experience do they really have? And then I want to get into prejudice. Does prejudice have something to do with this? The world that we're living in today, that temperature seems to be rising. So we don't want to go there, all right? But I'm working at it. Our managers are working on it. We're constantly training our managers. We're constantly training the realtors. We'll continue to do what we do, but we have to say some change has to happen from above. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So much better now that I said that.
So thank you for your story time. I don't feel better. But this is also where, from a regulatory perspective, the Real Estate Council of Ontario obviously is our regulator. The Real Estate Council of Ontario established the relationship between brokers and realtors, and through the Trust and Real Estate Services Act establishes what your obligations are as a broker. You have obligations as a broker, but you also have a relationship as a client. So Steve, how does that sort of level of tension impact the brokerage business today, and what could the potential impact be looking to the future?
Well, one of our pillars is be the guardian of our industry. So Yeah, it could be in a slogan, but we really work very hard for the past probably 15 years on education aspect. But what does it mean? So I want to share this with you. I mean, this fireside chat is going to be candid, open. I really don't care if it's been recorded, because our industry is fragmented, big time. And when we talk about the engagement of the technology, 17%, engagement of the participating in making the changes in our industry is not even 10%. Somebody get elected by maybe 130 votes, become a member of the board of the director of the TRREB. So, and look at what happened in the US now. And I interviewed David Dunbar, ex-executive of the Competition Bureau a few months ago. I said, get ready. Because of the political landscape, because of the politics of this, because consumers are fed up, our industry is targeted. Targeted, oh, we make easy money, we are doing X, Y, Z, and there is no regulation. And as Vivian said, our regulatory bodies are making an emotional, a reactionary decision. And nobody talks. RICO doesn't talk to CREA. CREA doesn't talk to OREA. The TRESA's launch for all of us was a chaos. Every morning we wake up, we just say, oh, they have a new form. So, and we call RICO, no, we don't like this form, the TRREB like that form. So we just change it, okay. So the only thing that is gonna happen in this industry, if you guys as a member get participated, from our perspective with our agent, we have a very firm policy in terms of the FinTrack. There is no if, there is no but, very simple policy, you don't get paid. And you know as an agent, when you don't get paid, we got your attention. We got your attention. I'm not going to go to jail. Vivian doesn't want to go to jail. And nobody wants on this want to go because, and FinTrack is not targeting us. You should see the new changes that FinTrack is coming. My Ottawa region is now under the audit. They want the financial statement of the company now. And guess why they want a financial statement of the company? Because they want to see were you profitable or not profitable, what sort of fine we should basically impose. So the industry is going to go through major changes in the next 10 years. I'm very happy that I see finally TRREB is creating an independent, I would call it corporation. It's not for nonprofit. Yeah, they are working on ideas and everything that basically, hopefully down the road, I vote for the day the TRREB becomes an independent corporation for profit. Then we as a member paying our dues, we can basically say, okay, let's invest here, let's have this plan, let's have benefit for the agent. It's time. And it's very interesting, if you take a look at our industry, OREA is fighting for its existence, CREA is doing the same thing, all the boards. In US, if you pay attention right now, every state, we are in US now, every state MLS is now one after another is announcing, I don't want no association with NAR. You failed us. So that's the first step. NAR is now fighting back. NAR is going back to the court. So be ready for those changes. Regulatory issues is going to get worse and worse. Don't be upset with your broker if you have to fulfill those things. We didn't create these. We didn't. They tell us, we have to grab it from you. So don't blame the broker that, oh, I couldn't get the FinTrack. No, you have to get it. You have to get it. And it will be changes with many contracts comes that you become, yes, you are independent contractor, but even the concept of the independent contractor now is under review. In the US, it's big time under review. In states, some states are saying, no, these people are employee. And legal jurisdiction in the US is completely different than Canada, but it's very interesting what's going to happen in the next couple of years. And now we got the Competition Bureau, again, is opening some file in Canada. So follow the rules.
So Michael, then Karen, then Evan, I'm going to give you each 60 seconds. What keeps you up at night thinking about the future of brokerage?
I was sleeping great before I just heard his speech. But
whatever you take, I take it.
No, 60 seconds, wow. I just find that right now we're talking about regulatory issues, and I think we have been hit as an industry with more changes in the last 12 months than I can remember in the last 33 years. And I don't mean in numbers, I mean in magnitude. And I think that's really the issue right now. And I'll pass.
Couldn't agree more. Karen?
So I would say the magnitude of change certainly is something that does worry everyone ever on stage. And I know also worries the community of realtors that we work with in the city and beyond, right? It's hard. There's really good people in this industry that say, I want to do the right thing. It's just a lot. Like the technology is changing, the rules are changing, the market's changing. So just the load of that is certainly one. But I think you also have to look at that question and flip it on its side a bit, because in every moment and in history, any times of great change, there's also great opportunity. So you can't be afraid of the change. You have to look at what does that change present to us as an industry. We're all very lucky on this stage. We've got big companies, we've got history, tenure, professionalism. There's a lot that we as a group can do in the face of change to ensure that we are trailblazing and that the industry is coming out the other side of this better, stronger, more resilient. So I actually have a lot of optimism and hope as well.
Beautiful. Just to keep it light and up. Sure. What excites you about the future of brokerage? Because we're going to end off with you.
That was going to be my response, was that this change is exciting. Like any of the change, any of these chaos periods is when you can look at it as an operator and say, okay, well, how can I help usher this through? How can I get our agents to be on board with these changes and adapting and moving with it? So I kind of like it when it's sort of forced upon us, because yeah, telling an agent to change just because you want them to is not going to happen. But when you guys say, okay, you have to change, there's a new policy in place and that's the new law, now we can start moving again and getting that adapted. So I think there's a ton of opportunity, and there's always going to be market share shifting around, and that's exciting from our seat. But I don't have to worry about, the part-time realtor in Chicoutimi. Like, we're very focused in downtown, midtown Toronto, and that lets us specialize. So bring on the change.
Beautiful.
Sorry, guys. I know some of our agents in here don't like hearing that, but
and
it's opportunity.
Hopefully there's no one here from Chicoutimi. To the panel, thank you so much. I'd now like to invite up Danny Roth, the publisher of Stories.
Well, that was pretty fascinating. Giles, Ryan, come on up. We thought that to end the discussion, or tonight's program, well, the first part was clearly a pretty energetic and interesting panel discussion. We wanted to take the opportunity to kind of have a little bit more of a personal and more intimate conversation in front of 150 of your favorite realtors. So I'm very excited to first of all say thank you for being here and to introduce two industry leaders who I think you're going to learn a lot from. Giles Sutherland, Head of Business Development for Interac Verified, and Ryan Lambert, Vice President of Strategy, Data, and Product Development at FCT. I'm thrilled that you guys are here, and I'm thrilled that we were able to kind of look at or take the next step from the early discussion about technology and digital transformation affecting the industry. Clearly, Interac has been at the forefront of sort of this digital economy, e-transfer, verification. You guys are doing billions of e-transfer transactions a day and hundreds of millions of verifications. Tell me a little bit about Interact and the size, its ubiquity. I feel like it's the only service we use, but tell me a little bit if that's right and the size of that sort of strength in the market.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to the earlier panelists. I think that brought a lot of good energy and left us on the note about kind of the change and some of the exciting things that are coming. And I think you use the word ubiquity, and I think that's, for anyone in Canada, really familiar. Those of you that interact with folks down south in the US or other markets, it's almost sometimes hard to describe how familiar and ubiquitous Interac is in our day-to-day lives. So, e-transfer and debit But I think kind of on theme of what we just heard from the previous panel, like that wasn't always the case. You know, it's not that long ago when e-transfer didn't exist at all. Most of us can at least somewhat remember that time, if not, like, I had a lot of experience with that, and before that, debit cards weren't a thing. But now it's second nature. We can barely, it seems like we can barely remember a time before it. And I think we see that role that we play as we look at kind of what's the next wave of things happening. We see in Canada, fraud is on the rise. Some of the challenges that are maybe specific to real estate are echoed in other segments, whether in financial services or public sector, private sector, kind of all over. And so I think what we see is from that role that Interac has played over the previous decades, we're now 40 years in, and as you said, there's 6 billion debit transactions, many billions of e-transfers. Like, this is deeply embedded within kind of our lives as Canadians, so much so that we almost forget it is there. It's just like second nature. And now we spend a lot of time looking at, you know, where are those kind of future opportunities and needs within the Canadian ecosystem? And that's where we're investing a lot in the verification software and technology, which is kind of that next frontier. We talked, you know, previously about like AI and a lot of these new technologies. We really believe that within Canada, in order for those technologies to really deliver the impact and value, and we heard, you know, technology is only useful if it can work. Like, if people can really use it, then it drives the value. I think without the appropriate underpinning, just like we've seen, you know, how we can move money and that facilitates a lot of utility in the market, we need some similar underpinnings where we see ourselves really extending that network role that we play to solving some of these other challenges that we see in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I think for today's discussion, we're kind of starting broad, and then we'll move into sort of how this applies in the real estate space. But as I thought about it on my way in, I mean, I bought a sandwich today. I provided some information to a client, financial information, and sent $100 to my son at Laurier. He said for books, I think for beer, and didn't think about it. Didn't even anticipate the risk that was involved in it. It has become second nature, and I would think that maybe even in and of itself, the fact that we don't think about it presents a risk when we're doing all these transactions digitally.
Yeah, and I think it's twofold. So it's one, there's, I think a lot of unknowns as we move to more and more digital. There's some expectation of trust. Maybe I'll pause. I guess show of hands for anyone here who's had a spam phone call from someone supposed to be from Canadian Revenue Agency, or, you know, the text. Yeah, like it's it is so familiar, and we do kind of just. And you hear these stories that someone tried to buy something on Facebook Marketplace. My neighbors tried to buy a puppy for their kids, and, you know, no puppy, kids are crying, and like, well, we thought Facebook Marketplace, we sent the transfer, and they're talking to me, so we sent it on e-transfer. Can we do anything? Like, you know, the scams are becoming so familiar. There's so many unknowns that we aren't thinking about. And then on the flip side, there's so many things that we're not thinking about that we assume are normal. So I painfully had to renew a mortgage, had to go into my bank, take an afternoon off work. The bank already holds my mortgage. My paycheck goes into that bank. They have all the data. Like, it should be there. I'd rather not take my day off work. There should be a better way to do it. But there's countless scenarios where we're doing things with paper. We hand someone our driver's license, they photocopy it, walk off into a back room, and now, like, with you tap your credit card, your debit card, you don't, we forget that not that long ago, you go to a restaurant and they'd like walk away with your credit card. Like, now if that happens, well, where are you taking my credit card? There's all of these use cases where we kind of take for granted that the normal way to do it is manual, paper-based. I'm going to take time out of my day, trust some person that I don't know that well to give all of my personal information to so they can walk away with it, maybe email, maybe PDF. So on both sides, I think there's a lot of, almost like as a, you know, citizens, we don't know what we don't know. And I think that's what's really ripe for change.
And sorry, yeah,
Go ahead, Brad.
maybe just add some context to that, because I think you hit on a couple of really good points. And I'm not here to fearmonger and make anyone feel really bad about the evolution of fraud in Canada, but some interesting data just dropped today from one of the bureaus. Canada ranks in one of the top 8 of all nations around the number of Canadians that are hit with a fraud attempt. It's over 50%. It's actually 56% of Canadians are hit with it. 8% fall prey to that. And the level of sophistication is only increasing in these fraud attempts. And it's interesting, Giles talks about a good point, and Danny alludes to it as well. You know, when we look at the ubiquity of, hey, I feel secure in tapping my piece of plastic and money is magically moving from one place to the next and it's coming out of my account, the magic of Interac. You know, how do we get to a place where identity data is secured in the same way organizationally across Canada? Again, all it takes is a name and a date of birth. That's enough to create a synthetic ID based on who you are, and with the right technology. Technology is for good. Technology is very powerful. AI is fantastic. Do you know who really likes to use AI? Fraudsters. They love it. And as many of these companies try to do good and prevent the bad actors from playing a role, the reality is it's a little bit of an arms race. And so this thinking around, you know, what is that future state of rails of identity, and how does identity kind of move from a physical mechanism to a digital one, just the same way that we all used to pay with cash, felt a little bit awkward to then pay with a card, and then it felt very natural to just hold your phone out and tap. What's the transition of how we look at identity from paper-based processes that can be inconsistent, and we heard the brokers speak, you know, sometimes hard that everybody follows the rules and completes consistently, to something that's a little more foolproof.
So let's, I mean, your company is well known in the title space and probably well known to a lot of people in this audience. The last time I bought a house was thank God, 2007.
Did you get FCT title insurance?
I think you were in there. And I think I might have used an agent from Callus's shop as well. I hope you got the commission check.
Perfect, we're checked off.
But I remember the process being incredibly onerous. I remember being at my lawyer's office multiple times. I was at the bank. I was with my mortgage broker. I was with the title insurance company. It was paper intensive, fraught with the opportunity for error. It was always in person. It just made the process that much more daunting. For a second, Ryan, sort of talk to us about the old model of a real estate transaction, and then I think it'll segue nicely, Giles, into sort of where we are now with the digitization and the technology that we have in place.
Absolutely, and I'll focus in on one of the core pieces. I mean, as going through the home buying process, you're forced to re-identify yourself up to 5 times with your realtor, perhaps with your broker, with your lender, with the title insurer, specifically if we think that there's fraud involved with it, but sometimes it just falls into our underwriting, and with the lawyer or notary. That's not including perhaps your P&C insurer as well, so we'll add a 6th one to there. You're using a variety of different mechanisms to go through this. Your PI, your personally identifiable information, beyond just your name and date of birth, a lot of other stuff is going everywhere in the manual process. I mean, if anyone wants to admit it, how many in the room want to hold up their hand and say, I've taken a picture of a client's ID, or I've had a client text me their ID on WhatsApp, or whatever different mechanism. The reality is that PI is going all over the place, and it's creating a ton of systemic risk in the industry around who's holding on to it, how they're protecting it, and how they're retaining it long term. And so the opportunity is to, again, bring more consistency and kind of think differently around what the approach may be. Maybe in the future, it's not the sharing of the raw PI information. Maybe it's instead sharing proofs and credentials and finding different ways to secure that identity information, while at the same time creating a much better experience for your clients, that they don't have to go through all of these vast and different and difficult mechanisms to ID themselves. And I think, that's a lot of what Interac has been kind of leading and at the cutting edge of thinking about, is what is that digitization process, and how do we do this piggybacking on our expertise on the payment side of the business.
Yeah, so Giles, tell us a little bit about Interac's role in that home buying process now.
Sure.
Interac Verified.
Yeah, so you have some, let's say, digitally verifying that you are who you are isn't brand new. As you said, people are taking pictures of the driver's license today and sending it. That's digital. There's a lot of services out there where you take a picture and then you scan a selfie, and then that flows through a digital service. And that's kind of digitizing an analog process that we're all really familiar with. As Ryan highlighted well, who loves AI is fraudsters love it. And so the same tools that we're using, and this is part of our technology suite as well. One of the components that we use is we can scan a face and use some really clever AI and machine learning to compare that face to a driver's license. And that is a great tool today that is offering efficiency and improvement on what is otherwise a very manual process. So it can incrementally improving, digitizing the analog. But to Ryan's point, where it's going, and for multiple reasons. So one is you got to outpace the fraudsters. That's a bit of a numbers game. So we are kind of putting in a lot of work there. So CRA is a good example. If you need to either sign in to access CRA, you can use your bank account as a proof that you're you, and we provide that service, or you can scan your driver's license and face. And through that, we are able to support very large-scale data and kind of get the best possible, let's say, integrity of knowing that Canadians really are who they are. But that's still only ever one single data point, and fraudsters are very, very good. And so the better deepfakes get and the better these things are, the quicker you can start to see that anytime you're relying on a single source of data, credit bureau data and credit files, as you highlighted, because of how easy it is for synthetic fraud and synthetic identities to be created, any data breach all of a sudden makes credit bureau data not the reliable single source you would ever want to use. And as much as scanning a face and a driver's license is good, technology is pacing so fast that you don't want to rely on that as a single source either. And so the only way you can really get ahead of it is to have multiple sources kind of corroborating. And so our approach here, and this is a little bit of a preamble to get to the point, but in the same way we have a network for debit cards or e-transfer, we have a new network that we're expanding, which is multiple data sources on one side that can verify that you really are who you are. This is, right now, a bank has already done their KYC on you, and you've proven yourself to them, and they also touch you regularly through every time you log into your banking app and everything else. They've kind of got an ongoing version of who you are. And your mobile carrier has a name and a phone number attached to you, and your credit bureau does. So you've got all these sources out there already that can kind of vouch for you. And you're sending e-transfers all the time to your son to hopefully buy books. And every time that email hits something, that kind of allows us to also calibrate a little bit of confidence that there's some people and kind of connections that we can get some more assurance around that. So this network model takes all of those data sources that are already there and facilitates that to transmit to title insurance or a lawyer or lender, whoever that may be, by allowing the user to click that button and say, actually, I'm comfortable with sharing that data that's already out there. We don't have to put that into a big repository, because I think one of the #1 rules we want to avoid is collecting more data and having that be a honeypot that could have more vulnerability. So where we see this future and where Interac thinks we really have an exciting role to play within the Canadian ecosystem is leveraging that role that we have as a network to connect the data that's already there to what we'd call a relying party or a consumer of that data that wants to know that you really are who you are, and we can flow that through in a network model. So it's kind of the evolution of paper-based to some kind of digitized version, probably based on that, to actually a purely digital model where the data connects.
And actually, just to build on that, to further put the pieces together, realtors are basically the first line of defense. And what makes FCT really unique is we are a title insurer, but most people don't know we're very involved in the end-to-end real estate transaction itself. We like to think of ourselves as kind of the last mile experts of a real estate transaction. We deal with realtors, lenders, lawyers, brokers, appraisers, default professionals, everybody in between. So realtors being the first line of defense, lawyers, notaries on a purchase transaction being the last line of defense, everybody else in between, the ability to, do it right the first time and have that reusability to travel downstream and build confidence on that identity verification. Each time it gets to kind of the next node in the transaction and the next node, you do two things. One, Again, hopefully you protect your client's PI in a much more efficient way because it's not being spread around to all of these various mechanisms and who knows what's being done with it, how's it being stored and secured. And number two, you actually, again, we hear about the importance of streamline and efficiency. You streamline and make the transaction more efficiency by taking out the difficulties that come with everybody having a different compliance process downstream. You're only as good as the next link in the chain in the real estate transaction. You know this better than anybody. You can be experts at what you do, but if the broker drops the ball or the lawyer drops the ball, and hey, sometimes even the title insurers drop the ball, if that happens, it reflects negatively upon you. So how do we actually create such a process that allows it to seamlessly flow from the first point, done right, through a digital mechanism, take that credential, maybe that exists on an Interac network in the future, and how does that actually start to flow down to the broker, to the lender, to the lawyer for a secure transaction chain?
The risks are conceivably very large. I mean, there's a story that I think our team at Stories wrote about a year or so ago. I think other media covered it. A homeowner couple were traveling. A couple used fake ID, impersonated the owners, hired an agent, listed the house, sold the house, and the new buyers took possession before the original owners returned from vacation. TRREB President Paul Barron talked about the obligation for due diligence on realtors. Not suggesting necessarily that the realtor was at fault for this situation, but this sort of shared obligation to do better. I presume that this is kind of the worst case scenario in a real estate context of a digital system that doesn't have the verification, that doesn't have the checks and balances, that doesn't really put in place the systemic checkpoints to protect consumers and to protect realtors.
I mean, again, I can tell you, and we don't share specific stats around actual fraud. We share around suspected fraud at FCT. But I can tell you in the last 18 months, and we see about half of the industry, half of the business, we flagged $750 million worth of suspected fraud. That's one entity that we've seen. That's roughly about 800 to 850 transactions. And again, the dollar size is growing and getting larger and larger. So it is a systemic problem. Again, where there's money to be made, the fraudsters will go. And in that particular case, again, there's all kinds of interesting vulnerabilities that happen, not even in a purchase and sale transaction scenario, but in individuals that potentially own their homes free and clear, technically tend to be individuals that are, maybe over the age of 50, 60, into their 70s. They own their home free and clear. Fraudsters definitely target them. They try and take out, quote unquote, micro mortgages against that. There's vectors of risk in the private side. So again, identity verification plays a role. Purchase, sale, refinance, even the rental space.
Yeah, and I think the stats, if you expand more broadly outside of real estate, it's, I think, annually approaching 600 million fraud losses from these scams and frauds that we're all so familiar with. But only 5 to 10% are reported because of embarrassment or various reasons. So, you kind of do the math, that's 6 billion, 11 billion a year. Like, these are massive numbers. And you can see that these things are interconnected. So, the fraudsters are following path of least resistance. And so, one of the ways is we look at, like, how do we tackle this? How do you, stem the flow? There are certain, and I think you walked through really well, like how specifically there are these weak points to be addressed within this industry. But also I think it's something that needs to connect in and kind of have that kind of ubiquity play as well. It can't be something that is in isolation. So the individual, like you said, there's going to be some that are buying a house, but some might be renting. Some might be also needing to buy a car, open a credit card. These systems need to be able to kind of talk to each other and get some level of familiarity as well. So as a home buyer in that experience, you also don't want it to feel like you're going through the ringer for that experience, and it's so different from what you do in other parts of your life. I think the opportunity is as we kind of level up digitally, across the ecosystem as Canada, and I think there's some kind of examples of other countries that are doing this better than us. We can really improve that.
And I'm cognizant of time. I want to move to rental in 1 second, but the suite of products, the Interac Verified products, the verification, the document verification, the sign-in services, Are these exclusively for consumers? Is there a professional application to this project? How does that, the relationship between these people and their clients in terms of that responsibility?
Yeah, great question. So it's primarily a suite of business tools. So what we see is demand from businesses, and the origins of this was actually from a lot of the financial institutions having a common need around compliance and KYC and the regulatory environment, which we heard about earlier is also kind of impacting this space. So the goal is to provide that suite of tools, but do it in a way that has that same familiarity for consumers. So one of the challenges is we want to be good at verifying that someone is who they are. Banks have this challenge and real estate agents, and this isn't unique. You want to balance that friction of being really confident that the other person is who they say they are, but minimizing the friction. And usually that was kind of a teeter-totter. You know, you make it really easy and you just kind of live with whatever fraud it takes, or you make it really hard because you have to, and the end user has to put up with an onerous process. But the goal is through this suite of services, with that model of kind of being able to hit a lot of data sources that the consumer already has and is already there kind of floating out in the ecosystem, make it really convenient so you actually get that benefit. So the business side streamlines their onboarding, they're fulfilling their obligation, whether it's regulatory, but also just to manage their fraud and privacy and kind of data impact. And then as a user and Canadian citizen, home buyer, home renter, whatever it may be, you actually have a much easier kind of, it's one click of a button on your phone. It's as second nature as sending an e-transfer because the data is there. So that's the proposition. So it's kind of business first, but with that benefit really kind of spreading out across the Canadian
I was just going to add one thing. Giles touches on a really key point around, you know, the ease of use. Again, you know, fraudsters are still in the minority, right? The very low minority, but big dollar values. The majority of customers are good actors. The majority of customers are good customers. They're not fraudsters. So yes, you can over-engineer this entire process and make it incredibly cumbersome and eliminate fraud, but then you make a really bad experience. So it's about finding that right balance. And as we heard from the panel before, most of real estate still does happen face-to-face, right? So how do you make it a good experience, even if you are going to leverage digital tools for when you're still sitting across the table, sitting across the couch in the coffee shop with your clients? How do you make the best of what the technology is? It fits as seamless into the conversation, just as it does now, where, you know, I would take out my wallet and give you the $20 I owe you before. Now I just tap my phone into yours and we Venmo it. So,
and I would assume that we're going to close, but I assume that the value for the people in this room, for the brokers and for the agent, the realtors themselves, is that they become smarter professionals. They become more careful professionals. They become better stewards of the success of their clients' transactions. Is that sort of where we're heading as professionals? They just are better, there's just better service for the client at the end of the day?
Absolutely, and on the earlier panel, I was talking about, again, technology is an enabler. Like, it's not substituting, it's not replacing. I like the in-person example you gave. Like, I had to go into my bank branch recently and prove who I was, and they were asking me questions when I'm staring across, like, this shouldn't, it's not going to replace it, but if I can open up my mobile banking app and answer the skill testing questions that they're giving me, surely there's a way to kind of cut through that and give a shortcut. And so it's the same thing. You can go face-to-face and see that person. There's still the obligation to be leveraging the best-in-class tools. So there's, I think, a new wave of capabilities that different segments are going to use. As a Canadian, I think, consumer, I don't think there's a long demand for that to be completely different types of user experience and flow, whether you're buying a house or renting a house or buying a car or opening a bank account. Like, the goal would be there's some kind of harmonization there. And that's what we see also in kind of other international markets is you're able to stitch this together. So if I'm going in to prove who I am to pay my taxes or open a bank account, there's some commonality there. And so that's where I think for, you know, this audience, like, it's being able to understand kind of where some of that ecosystem is going, and in the same way that other sectors are taking advantage of this, I think it plays so well where it can be compatible and familiar with what Canadians are going to start to see in those other areas of their life, and it will be, hopefully, start to feel, you know, as second nature as some of the other digital services that we use in our day-to-day lives.
You know, I think I'm at a weird point in my life because I feel like I'm still young enough to appreciate these new technologies, but I'm just old enough to be scared shitless. So, and I'm certainly thrilled to have companies like Interac and FCT helping us in making sure that these technologies are used for good and that consumers and professionals are well protected. So I want to thank you. I particularly want to thank Interac Verified for your support of stories and your support of tonight's evening. And also, I want to thank you. On a personal note, you know, I started what was Toronto Stories in 2016 because I thought there were real stories that you were telling the market, that you were teaching us, that you had insights to say, and I believe that there was a market for those stories. And here we are, almost not quite 10 years later, with this kind of event and this kind of turnout, and just on a personal note, it's a thrill, and I thank you for supporting us, and I thank you for being here, and I thank you. Good night, everybody. Thank you.